This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Here's Stephen Sinclair from Jackson's on George.
In general, Westholme, I use several items on the menu from them. I always look to source products for their flavour. And with Westholme, I think they deliver that 100%. Australian Wagyu, in particular, Westholme is world class. Westholme is recognised for their quality all over the world. And then that's why, and when I tried it, and I absolutely love the flavour. This is, why I decided to put them on the menu.
Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I've been a chef my whole life, and I love cooking. It's where I would choose to spend my time if I given all options. I would rather be in the kitchen, just developing people and working with them and just seeing them grow and making lifelong friends is quite a joyous thing to be doing with your time.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Change is inevitable, but as an individual, it is not easy. After years of delivering a hospitality offering from your heart, what is it like abandoning that and taking a completely different tact? Peter Roddy is the chef and co-owner of Pastarami, Pier Street, and also Arlo in Victoria. Peter, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. How about you?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You've made some big changes this year, but you've got 3 venues. How are things going at the moment?
Yeah, pretty good. Kind of hopefully past the worst of winter. It's been a long one this year, but signs of life are around again now. Getting ready for a big summer.
You got 3 very different venues. All of them feeling a bit of an uplift at the moment as we're moving to warmer climes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the beachside ones, obviously in particular, the weather is make or break for us.
You made the decision to change your restaurant this year that you've had for over a decade. A hatted establishment, many awards. Tell us about the change that you made and the creation of Pastarami.
Well, Noir had kind of a very good run. 12 years for a small restaurant in Swan Street is pretty good innings. And it was starting to get quiet, just the financial climate changing, and I hadn't been working in the business for quite some time. And it was just time for a change. We kind of always thought we would do it when we opened the second venue, but COVID kind of got in the way of that, and we had passed that, and it was time for a change. So,
tell us about that process of change. What was it like? Were there challenges with it?
I tried to get Noir managed several times, and it kind of never stuck. It always required an awful lot of attention from me. So the idea was something that was a bit more manageable. And one of my apprentices had kind of come up in the ranks to sous chef at Noir, and we saw an opportunity to take him on as a business partner. And Pastarami was born. Jono and I kind of had a joint love of making pasta, so that was the kind of kernel that the business was born out of.
Tell us about the inspirations for it and the concepts. Where have you drawn inspiration for this model that you've created?
I guess Tip 0 was a big one. Just seeing them in their early days kind of hit that market. They were sort of $40 for a bowl of pasta and a glass of wine. They're certainly not anymore, but they were then. And I just thought it was so clever. And to be able to offer something delicious at that price would draw in the crowds.
How's the response been to the changes after a decade of an offering that the community are familiar with? What's it been like?
It's been mixed. Like been a lot of my Noir was loved, so it was people don't like change sometimes. So this is a bit too simple from what we're used to. Was definitely a comment, but we've hit a new audience, and it's definitely just repeat custom is always a good measure of whether you're doing the right thing or not, and we're definitely seeing people come back again and again.
You mentioned your great love of pasta and getting a great pasta for value as well. Tell us a couple of dishes that you have on the menu that sort of exemplify what you're doing there.
Well, kind of 12 years as a in a French restaurant throws up a lot of sauces, so we've taken an awful lot of the sauces from Noir and put them on the menu there. So I had one prawn beast that was doing it's become our prawn pasta now. It was always a stuffed tortellini before that was quite labour intensive, and now it's a spaghetti, which is a little simpler to get out. And yeah, that's a kind of crowd favourite. And yeah, I got onto fine dining lovers online at one point through Facebook, and read an article about a guy in New York who was making spices, and I started importing all these spices to try at Noir. And we got one that really stuck, was a smoked cinnamon product that we still kind of import from a place called La Boite in New York today, and that goes in to make our duck sauce, which is sort of really unique to us. It doesn't taste like anywhere else. And so our duck is also a kind of a stayer on the menu.
This shift away from fine dining, did you make any sort of cosmetic changes to the restaurant? And does it feel different in there now?
Oh, very much so. It was kind of moody and dark, and we had designers come in and do a really good job. And then myself and Jono took 6 weeks off and executed the design ourselves with help from a few tradespeople. And it's a completely different. Every bars have all been pulled out. Every chair is different. Every table. It's a complete overhaul.
What about from a business perspective? The margins are so fine in hospitality. Has this sort of shift and the average spend and stuff, has that changed sort of the money that's coming in and the running of the business?
It's definitely less labour intensive, and labour is the big kind of control point at the moment in hospitality. It's just very, very hard. So yeah, that's been the change. And the sauces at Noir maybe took 5 days to make, whereas the sauces here, kind of you can get out 24 hours, and it's pretty, yeah, takes some of the pain out of it.
At the top of the show, we mentioned the 3 venues that you have. There's also Pier Street and Arlo. Tell us a bit about those two.
So Pier Street was the second venue we opened after Noir. So we had been 10 years at Noir, and my partner, Ebony, his mum and dad live in a beachside town outside Geelong called Port Arlington. And we had been in Port Arlington. We spent public holidays and whatnot there, celebrate my daughter's birthday, and the kind of main cafe in the town, the beachside sort of large venue, had come up for lease off the local council, so we jumped at that and opened a seafood cafe specialising in the local mussels. Yeah, so Port Arlington mussels are quite famous, and we kind of churn out during summer kind of 140, 150 kilos of mussels a day. So yeah, that was venue number 2, and then venue number 3 is just up the hill from Pier Street, and it came up. We'd already decided to execute Pastarami, and just the opportunity came up, and it was too much to say no to. So we've sort of opened a wine bar called Arlo, which is more or less a Pastarami clone. It also specialises in pasta and snacks and wine. So that's finding its feet still. At the moment, I kind of had already committed to Pastarami, so I've spent most of the first half of the year refurbing and getting Pastarami started, and now I'm just starting to refurb Arlo, getting ready for our season goes from kind of Boxing Day on. So getting ready for Boxing Day.
The wine bar is an interesting addition to everything that you do. You've got an amazing chefing background, which we'll get into shortly, but you also curate the wine lists for your venues as well. Tell us about sort of how you got into that and what it's like, with all the chef credentials and balancing that wine list.
Well, Noir being fine dining, we employed a sommelier for the whole 12 years that we were open. So I've had somebody selecting wines for me and talking me through them and telling me why. I also done my own WSET wine qualifications. So just over time, I've gained that knowledge. So it's another kind of fun thing to be able to offer people some interesting wines.
Tell us about the process that you go through in selecting wines, and does sort of what consumers are looking for at the moment, is that a consideration with the list as well?
Yeah, the feedback we get back on the floor is what drives the wine list, really. Like, I mean, we have our own ideas, and then we have a group of people who are happy to tell us what they want, if we're willing to listen. So, we've got Amy at Pastarami who's doing a wonderful job chatting back and forth with the customers and just tweaking the wine list and getting that right.
Well, I want to explore and discuss sort of your love of small producers as well shortly. But take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play?
I grew up in a town called Dundalk, which is on the border between North and Southern Ireland, kind of halfway between Dublin and Belfast on the East Coast. And I grew up in a single-parent family, and cooking the dinner was one of my jobs. Doing the shopping was one of my jobs, as well as keeping the gardens and whatnot. And kind of my mum kind of identified that I took some joy in the cooking, so she set me up with a job in kind of the best restaurant in my hometown. It was called Quaglino's. Quite a fine dining sort of Euro establishment. Pat Kelly was the name of the guy, and he'd won Chef Ireland, and he'd worked in some big hotel kitchens in London. And through that, I got exposed to a chef called Raymond McCardle, was the head chef there when I was working there, and he had a background in Michelin star joints in Belfast, and he was a really kind of cool and inspirational guy. Drove a sports car, sort of, was into cool music, and at 14 years old, I was very impressionable, and he was very good. And yeah, kind of the apprenticeship system in Ireland, people do placements in work, so kind of 6-month placements. So there's an awful lot of young chefs kind of going through that kitchen. I was there for 5 years. I was there from I was 14 till I was, or from I was 13 till I was 18. And yeah, so started out in the dishes and then playing up a few desserts at Christmas time, and then just started to be a part of the team. And through that, the kind of placement guys would go on to their next place, and I would then go and stage in those places with them, kind of sleeping on their couch. And I got exposed to Kevin Thornton's kitchen that way, who was a 2-star in Dublin. And that was like just another level of passion and another level of attention to detail. And yeah, it was just an insanely good restaurant. I was only there for 2 weeks, but what 2 weeks. And yeah, that kind of got me to 18 and ready to go out on my own and kind of leave Quaglino's. And I wound up in Glasgow from there, where I kind of worked with some famous kind of the cutting edge of restaurants at that time.
What was it like for an 18-year-old leaving home and sort of moving to Glasgow? What was that experience like for you?
Like being, in hindsight, much harder. I'm an optimist by nature, so I'll be fine. It'll be easy. Of course, it wasn't. But you just kind of one foot in front of the other and got it done. And the restaurants I was working in then were quite demanding, and it was an 8 a.m. start and a 1 a.m. finish, and there wasn't much time to be homesick or anything else.
You briefly mentioned that you worked in Gordon Ramsay restaurant in Glasgow. Tell us about that and what it was like in that kitchen.
It was very, very intense. It was not for me in the long run. Gordon Ramsay at the time was he was the most famous chef in the country, and he was on TV a lot, yelling at people, and that was the atmosphere in his kitchens at that time. It attracted very passionate chefs and very passionate bullies, and yeah, so I kind of had all the time in the world for the chefs, but not much time for the bullies. So I was 6 months there. I didn't last the long run, but went on then to work with the Roux brothers in their restaurant in Glasgow called the Shot and Door. Terence Conran had a place called Etan in Glasgow, and I kind of climbed up the ranks there. Head back to Dublin for a bit and worked with U2, owned a hotel called the Clarence. And Anthony Eli, the head chef, had been running the Square in London previously with Phil Howard, and was an amazing guy to work with as well.
How did you end up coming to Australia?
I kind of got myself those kind of 5 years in Glasgow. I was kind of done my training, worked my way up to sous chef, and kind of figured that 23, it was probably taking on an awful lot, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to go and travel for a bit, and that's going to be the next phase. So I kind of booked my flights, and then some of the other guys in the kitchen decided that was going to be their path as well. So those three of us came out and came backpacking around Australia, and we're all still here. That was 2004, so it's 20 years.
Well, tell us about that period of time. What kept you here, and where did you get your foot in the door in the hospitality scene?
We didn't. We sort of done 3 months in each city. I worked for a bit at Nick's Seafood in Sydney, and I worked in a restaurant called Bluestone in Melbourne. Randomly, I wound up as executive chef of Dunk Island, up off of Mission Beach for a few months, and had a lot of fun there. And then went off. We did our year in Australia and went off to New Zealand after that. And I kind of settled in Queenstown, where I got my first head chef's job, and just enjoyed an awful lot of success there in a place called Pier 19, and met my wife Ebony. And Ebony brought me back to Melbourne.
Tell us about that move to Melbourne, and you've been entrenched in the industry there for quite a while now. What was it like when you first got there?
Well, Ebony and I met in Queenstown and really had an awful lot of success. We ran this big waterfront restaurant and had a great time, and got good at working together. And when we got back to Melbourne, we were ready to get stuck into our own business. We had made an awful lot of money for the guy in Queenstown, and I kind of knew we could do it. So it was time to go and do our own thing. We had a couple of false starts, and we had some visa issues and an awful lot to work through, but eventually Melbourne opened its door for us, and we opened Noir.
Tell us about opening Noir, finding the location and building your first restaurant. What surprised you about it?
Again, I'm an optimist, so I was surprised by just how hard it was. I started out, Ebony's family really done an awful lot of work to get us on our feet. They are chippies and electricians and whatnot, and they really helped us out. And then in the early days, we didn't have a liquor license, so we were BYO for the first 6 months. And yeah, we just put all everything we could into it. And my sous chef I had been with was my best friend, essentially. I've been with since Etan days, and travelled Australia with. And, he came on board, and it was him, Ebony and I, and we had kind of years of history working together. So it didn't open like a new restaurant. It opened like people had been working together for a long time. So we had an amazing start. And yeah, we were able to, we'd taken over an old site and it was falling apart, and we had no money to invest in anything. When we opened, the oven door was held together with a piece of string, and we'd have to undo the string, open the oven, put something in, quickly close it, and tie the string up again. But we managed to make enough money to do the refurb and get it all looking schmick, and get the kitchen refurbished, and run a professional establishment.
Over a decade is amazing for any venue. Do you have any sort of moments in time over those years, or a story of a specific moment that you look back fondly of that time with Noir?
Oh, I guess getting the hat was a huge one. It was still the first team when we got the hat. And yeah, it was just a credit to all the work we'd put in. We were delighted. That was the ambition, and that's what we set out to achieve. And Ross, my best friend, left shortly after we got the hat, but I was delighted he was there because he really worked hard to get it. And Ebony was still on the floor. We had kids shortly afterwards, and she'd really worked hard, so she really deserved to be there when it happened. And so that was a highlight.
You've had a really great connection with small producers. Tell us a bit about sort of how you curate a menu and the connections that you made. Do you have a couple of producers that you've worked with over the years that you can tell us about?
Yeah, we're kind of still working with the same people. We've had Devon Ducks, our duck supplier. Duck was the kind of signature standout thing at Noir, and it remains on the menu at Pastarami. So yeah, he's been a long time collaborator. We've been buying fish from Ash Brothers Seafood for such a long time, and then down the beach I've got this local fisherman called Jerka. He's got Jenkins Seafood down here. His son works the boats in Port Fairy, so he kind of it's just banging fresh, and the man, I could sit and watch him fillet fish. He's just got such skill. It's incredible. But he goes out for flathead and whiting, so we just get incredibly fresh, beautiful flathead and whiting for the cafe. And of course the mussels. We're planning to go out on the mussel boat with the teams, all 3 teams, in November. There's a Port Arlington mussel tour company now, so we're going to take them out for a bit of an ease up.
How important are those relationships that you've formed, and not only as you build your business, but also sort of with what ends up on the plate?
Well, we're totally reliant on quality produce. You can't. There's no kind of. There's no more important relationship really, and the suppliers are really good to me. Make sure that we're just getting any. And if there's any issues, they fix them really fast. And it's kind of what you build your business on is those relationships.
You mentioned that Jono was an apprentice and built him up now to be a partner. Has been with the business for a while now. How do you build a sort of positive work environment and maintain sort of the same staff over many years?
I guess we just have systems for nurturing people and kind of clear points at which you kind of start out and you're lost, and kind of we nurture them up and get them up to speed, and once they can box out a section, then their kind of work is measured. As a chef, your work is measured by how much you can produce and the quality of the work that you produce. And once they hit the level, and they know what the level is, once they hit the level, we move them on to the next part and just keep on. They can see that career progression, and let them make mistakes and not fly off the handle about it. And before you know it, they're very competent people.
You've made the big move to change your restaurant model this year for a more casual offering. Where do you see food at the moment in Australia, and where do you see it going?
It's just so diverse. Almost every there's so much skill and so much interesting cuisine. I'm kind of very well versed in European cuisine, but I know next to nothing about Asian cooking, so I love going out and experiencing that side of things. My partner Ebony and I eat out a lot, or at least we used to eat out a lot before we had kids. I really, really enjoy the food scene in Australia just because there's so much difference. I'm excited by what other people are doing.
You've got 3 venues at the moment, and quite busy with the different offerings. What's the plan for the next sort of year or two?
We are going to do Pier Street is going to do a mussels sauce business. So I've got a guy, Krishna, who's been with me for 5 years at Pier Street, who, he's just bought a house. He's not going anywhere. So we're going to do a business together that offers the sauces that we put with the mussels as a take-home product from Pier Street, and hopefully we'll sell them through my fishmonger and through the lady that sells mussels on the pier and whatnot. So that's one thing. Arlo we're refurbishing currently, so it'll find its final form pretty soon. And kick on for summer. I mean, it's just incredibly, the beachside town is just incredibly busy over January and all of summer, really. So yeah, win that. I hope. Hopefully you'll employ enough people to staff it properly, and it goes from a team of maybe 10 people in December to a team of 50 people in January. So the kind of hiring and onboarding process for that is just, it's an amazing an amazing challenge every year. So that's my next kind of 6 months, and hopefully a nice European holiday next year. My sister's getting ready to have a baby back in Ireland, so we got to go home and see the baby.
That sounds amazing. People aren't naturally happy with change, or people hesitate about change and what might happen. For those out there that might be in need of changing their restaurant or about to, what sort of advice, given the success that you've had with the drastic changes, what sort of advice would you have for operators out there that might be sort of looking to take that leap and change up what they're doing?
Well, I guess my sort of opinion on it was that the change needed to be drastic. That I had seen several people go from being, let's say, a fine dining French restaurant into a bistro, and pretty much just offering the same thing, but the same experience, but a little bit cheaper. And I don't think that's enough to really get change and get new people through the door. And so we went for drastic. So that would be my advice: go big or go home.
Well, it's paying dividends clearly with that approach. And what do you love about what you do?
Just the people. There's so many kind of long-term relationships I've gotten through it. Like, I have been a chef my whole life, and I love cooking. It's where I would choose to spend my time if I given all options. I would rather be in the kitchen, but obviously running 3 businesses has kind of led me away from there. But just developing people and working with them and just seeing them grow and making lifelong friends is quite a joyous thing to be doing with your time.
Well, Peter, congrats on the changes that you've made, and look forward to seeing where you take things from here. It's an absolute pleasure having you on Deep in the Weeds today. So please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you very much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.